All right, everybody, welcome back. This is the second video that I've made about the my time abroad as a missionary. And so my last video was an overview of my time in Papua New Guinea, and this will be detailing my time while I was with YWAM, specifically the school that I was a part of, and then to sort of break down what YWAM is, and then what and set the stage for the next couple of videos where I'll talk about my time in Madang and then my time on board the ship. So YWAM stands for Youth with a Mission. DTS stands for Discipleship Training School. And then I went to YWAM Ships in Kona. So YWAM is obviously it's aimed at younger people, but specifically people that are out of high school uh, before going into college or have just graduated college. And I was put in contact with them through a group called GoCore. And GoCore is a group that helps you to find mission placement, helps you to do fundraising. And to be a part of YWAM long term, you have to do the Discipleship Training School. That's DTS. And where I was going to be in Kona, Hawaii, because that is the base which is associated with the ship which initially recruited me. So the support and logistics is done in Kona for a lot of what the ship does, and then the ship itself, the Liberty, is located in Papua New Guinea. And some of the other bases that are on or in Papua New Guinea were started by the people from YWAM Kona, YWAM Ships Kona. Now, there's actually two bases on the Big Island. One is the ship's base, which is smaller. Unfortunately, I don't have any of the pictures that I took while I was there. I don't know what happened to them, but they are not on my Google Photos, which is pretty sad. Um, so here's a picture from Google. It's quite nice, but it is a very old building. It used to be a hotel, so there's quite a bit of maintenance that has to be taken care of, and of course, no air conditioning or like climate control in the rooms. It is right next to the ocean, however, and while you can't see it, I think you can see my mouse. Off to the side is a dock, just a few minutes walk away. And so this is where I lived, almost exactly the view from where I lived, because I was on the top floor and uh, in this corner of the building. Um, Below, down those stairs, that's where our classroom was. And while I was there, we had classes with a different theme every week. And we would have somebody who arrived and they would speak on different Christian topics. The most prominent ones were hearing the voice of God. And the one that I remember the most was the spheres, which is where it was talking about Christianity applied in to various jobs, to various parts of society, spheres of influence. At any rate, that was the one that I remembered the most. But there are a few which are universal, I believe. I think that Holy Spirit Week and Hearing God's Voice and Relationships Week are all universal, but each semester will also have several, most of the weeks are variable. It depends on which teachers they can get and which topics the teachers are willing to cover. And so that was in the morning for several hours until around 3 o'clock, I believe. And then we would have a few hours of work duty and then dinner. And sometimes we would go up to the upper campus to do worship. Other times we would have it down on base. and we'd always have some sort of morning meeting on base. That upper campus is called the University of the Nations, uh, and it is in YWAM Kona. It's a very large base. There were about 2,000 people each night that we had worship, and yeah, it was quite busy. Um, and so partway through your school, you'll be divided up into teams, and these teams where are assigned to different countries. So you'll go with people who are students and a few who are leaders and do outreach and then come back to do your graduation and debrief. And obviously I didn't do that part, but the teams the team that I was a part of was actually going to Papua New Guinea. And so that worked out nicely because they were already sending a team to the location where I was going to be spending my most of my time. Um, Now before I go on to my personal experiences and what I think of it, there's something that I want to cover because we actually had a misconception. There's actually a woman who was doing her DTS, who the first time she had visited a YWAM base was with her daughter several years ago, and her daughter was doing her DTS, and this woman was checking because she had heard that YWAM was a cult. This is a word that gets thrown around a lot. Um, and I think that most people can tell that just because something is an organization, a religious organization, doesn't mean that it's a cult. But I want to go ahead and lay out how you can tell if something is cult-like or something is unhealthy. Because the truth is, because YWAM doesn't have a strict hierarchical structure, it is possible for a base to become cult-like because there isn't always the structure in the leadership to be held accountable. But the design of YWAM, the intended design, is very resistant to forming cult-like behaviors because it encourages you to have things outside of it. Now, what one of the major defining parts of a cult is that there is nothing outside of it. For you to be a part of this cult, you have to make it part of all that you do. Now, this is confusing to some people because a religion or philosophy also requires you to apply it to every area of your life. But that is a belief system and not an organization. It is the difference between trying to be Christ-like in everything you do and trying to make everything that you do relate back to the prosperity of the particular church that you're a part of, this specific church body. Now, it's good to have lots of investment in your church body, and this is one of the things that YWAM encourages, which makes it difficult or should make it difficult to become cult-like. Because while you're part of YWAM, you have to support yourself. You have to speak to people outside in order to support you. And what's more, you're encouraged to be a part of churches, not just to raise money, right? They were, at least with me, relatively clear that you should be part of a local church near to your YWAM base and not be raising money from them. If they want to support you, that's all well and good. But that specific part, not raising money, means that you're encouraged to have connections, relationships, friendships that are not directly related to YWAM, even if you're a full-time staff. That's not always easy because full-time staff is quite demanding. They're often living on base. People with families who are long-term are often uh, find it easier for the whole family to live on base. So that can give the impression of it being a bit like a commune. Um, but because, but that's not necessary, and getting out of that position is not difficult. It's at least in my experience, there was not any attempts to emotionally blackmail me into staying. However, um, that isn't to say that YWAM is completely the perfect organization, because a thing can be flawed and not be a cult, or a thing can be flawed and still be worth being a part of. We are humans, and necessarily every organization is going to be staffed by humans. But overall, my experience was good. The only issues were that due to my specific circumstances, uh, and the base that I was a part of, being part of the ship for so long, that was where my difficulties came in, because it was difficult for me to contact or to easily speak with the leadership consistently. And there were not people holding um, the leadership on the ship to a YWAM standard. They were not YWAMers. Uh, the first mate and the chief engineer and even the captain, though he was though whenever we did get a captain, it seemed like a pretty good guy and a Christian. They were not familiar with YWAM, and they were also um, not always uh, and they were sometimes struggling with what they were having to do. So what happened with me was I had an excellent experience uh in my DTS in my school. They were good about letting you ask questions. They were good about encouraging and personal development, getting you connected with other people. Good to have friends in YWAM. However, whenever I was placed onto the ship, there was not a well-established YWAM group there, which led to some difficulties with me being put into positions that I wasn't really ready for. So we've got this lovely stock image that communicates how I felt. The challenge was is that I was marketed a specific experience, and the ship was not prepared for that experience. Now, I understand that things are flexible, things change. Um, but if you put out a listing for a mechanical engineer, and then whenever I ask, and then I double checked, is there an engineering position? Because it's not the same as being a mechanic, and it's not the same as being a ship's engineer. They were still under the impression that I would have a position like that. And I was willing, and I did enjoy non-engineering work. The difficulty is I was put into an administrative position, which I had little experience and no desire to do. Um, so that was my last few months on board the ship, which was pretty challenging. And it wasn't helped by the fact that for some of the time I was in the administrative position, I was given work that was actually the chief engineer's job. The chief engineer had given me that work when he should be doing it. And if there was knowledgeable YWAM staff or leadership there, they could have held him accountable. But because our main leadership was located across the Pacific Ocean, that wasn't really feasible. So I would definitely, I don't want you to let the experience that I had, taint your decision on being part of a YWAM VTS, because my position was quite unique. It's not often that somebody comes straight out of DTS and goes into a YWAM organized base that is predominantly staffed by people who aren't a part of YWAM and whose leadership is located on the other side of the world. So do bear in mind that mistakes can happen, but that the overall intention and the work that is done, what is actually accomplished for the nation, is usually really excellent. And that the school itself and the time that you spend with the DTS team on outreach is also really excellent. The trouble for me came whenever I separated from my team, but was still a part of YWAM. So I believe that is everything that I have to say. If there are questions, feel free to ask them, and I will be coming out with my next video soon. Tune in next time for whenever Brett first steps foot on the island of Papua New Guinea.